Welcome. You've just woken up, but not in the familiar room, with no sunlight streaming through the curtains, no sound of cars passing on the street, or the whistle of a boiling kettle like a normal morning. No, you've just opened your eyes in Berlin, March 1945, in a concrete bunker, more than 8 meters underground, called the Führerbunker, and you are Adolf Hitler's personal secretary. The good news, you're still alive. The bad news, everything else. The air here is thick, damp like the breath of a forgotten cave, and the smell, well, if you mixed the scent of a leather coat worn through all 4 seasons, a hint of stale tobacco, rusted iron, and something like fermented potato soup sealed in an ammo crate, you'd still only get about 50% of the horror clinging to your nostrils. Your bed? Oh, calling it a bed is an insult to the concept of beds. It's a field soldier's mattress, so thin you feel, every pebble of the concrete floor jabbing into your back, with a Nazi wool blanket heavy as a water-soaked medieval tapestry. You try to turn over, but your spine immediately protests with a dry crack, a sound eerily like Hitler's fist slamming the table when he hears his armies were just crushed on the Eastern Front. Your room has no windows. Obviously, no one builds a bunker for natural light. Instead, there's a dim yellow bulb, flickering like it's quietly signaling that hope is losing its signal too. On the wall is a military map with thousands of red pins, and just below it, a note in your handwriting. Need to update casualty figures before presenting to the Führer. This time, check the spelling. You've never been so terrified of a typo. An alarm clock, unnecessary. The sound waking you is the roar of Allied bombs pounding the ground above, shaking the concrete ceiling, sending dust falling from the cracks, and a panicked rat scurrying across your pencil case. You hear the ventilation pipes hissing like the breath of a demon, and somewhere down the hall, heavy footsteps echo, maybe SS soldiers, maybe death itself in hobnailed boots. The clock reads 6:17 a.m. You have exactly 13 minutes to put on your uniform, brush your hair, straighten your shirt, and brace yourself for a 90-minute monologue from Hitler that you must transcribe without missing a word, whether he's ranting about Nietzsche's philosophy, the number of tanks on the Oder line, or how rats ate his cheese ration. You get out of bed, your feet touching the freezing stone floor, cold as a gravestone. You shiver, not sure if it's the cold or the knowledge that today might be your last. You pull on the grey uniform, rarely washed because there's no soap, only gasoline and fear, and step outside. The hallway lights are dim, faintly illuminating a framed portrait of the leader at the end of the corridor. And right then, a shout erupts from the next room, Hitler's voice screaming someone's name. Before you can catch your breath, the guard looks at you and nods. He wants to see you. Now, you nod, swallow hard, and step into the darkness ahead. This is your job, this is your hell, and it's only just begun. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with the latest stories. You step into Hitler's office. If you can call a sealed concrete room with a single dim bulb, a map of Europe being carved up day by day, and a wooden desk buried under papers and office, and immediately feel the air pressure change. It's denser, heavier, and carries a distinct smell. Old paper, purple ink, the lingering smoke from Goebbels' half-burned pipe left from yesterday, and the scent of Hitler's hair after 3 days without washing. He's already there, sitting motionless like a wax statue, his eyes boring into you, as if reading your blood pressure, heartbeat, and deepest thoughts. Guten Morgen, he says, his voice soft but resonant, like a gunshot fired into the sky. You respond just loudly enough to show respect, but not so loud as to seem ostentatious. A lesson learned from your predecessor, who was replaced after laughing at the wrong moment when he recounted his dream of conquering Moscow in 7 days. On the desk is a draft of a speech he'll deliver on the radio, if Berlin still has a radio signal. Your task? Type it all up at 300 characters per minute, without errors, without trembling hands, and if possible, without tears when he reads aloud the part comparing himself to Caesar, Napoleon, and ancient gods betrayed. He believes history is rewriting itself, that every current defeat is just a prelude to the glorious triumph of the master race. He believes the American army will fracture, Stalin will explode with rage, and in the end, the world will erect a statue of him, twice the height of 2 Eiffel Towers stacked together. And you? You nod. You nod, as if your head was pre-programmed, as if saying no means disappearing behind the steel door of the next room, the so-called medical room, from which no one emerges intact. Every day Hitler talks for hours to himself, in your presence. He uses you as a witness to a history spelled wrong, and you must record every comma, every pause, even the odd silences, when he stops to stare into the distance at the wall, whispering, "They don't deserve me." Sometimes you think he's talking to you. Sometimes you know he's talking to himself, or rather to an illusion in his mind that has replaced the entire outside world. You once tried asking a question, just once, about the situation in Cologne. He turned to you, not angry, not shouting, just looking. A look that chilled your spine for 3 days. After that, you stopped asking. You learned to become a shadow, a typing machine that knows fear, a silent witness to a man who believes he's immortal, not in a mythical sense, but in a very real one. Hitler doesn't believe he'll die. He once said, "I was chosen. Fate won't let me die in this bunker. The rats will die, I won't." And you sit there, listening, typing, nodding, in your ears. The occasional boom of bombs echoes from the surface, a reminder that every word he says is being directly contradicted by artillery, but he doesn't care. For him, truth isn't in the numbers, it's in willpower, in the unshakable belief that if he wants the sun to rise in the west, astronomers will have to apologize, and you, chosen to record his legacy, must accept that here, truth has been replaced by power, by fear, and by a madness too perfect to be called pathological. At the end of each session, he reviews everything, correcting every comma, changing fight to sacrifice, swapping allies for filthy swine, and muttering, "They'll read this for 1,000 years." And you must print it out. 3 copies, stapled in the right order, stamped, and placed on the desk without letting a single drop of sweat fall on the margins. Because he despises moisture from weak bodies. Sound unbelievable? Welcome to your job. You're not writing history. You're typing for a delusion. But if you mistype a single word, it might become reality. And if you survive today, another speech awaits tomorrow. The world outside is cracking apart. But here, underground, in the office of a man who thinks he's eternal, there's only one truth. You can never be wrong, even when he's entirely wrong. 6:45 a.m. It's the moment you must complete the most sacred ritual in this bunker, brewing tea for Hitler. This isn't ordinary tea. This is the leader's tea, dried herbs from the Carpathians, personally selected by Dr. Morel, whose medical expertise lies somewhere between a shaman and a reluctant inventor. The water temperature must be exactly 82 degrees, not 81, not 83, 82. Below 81, he says, it lacks vitality. Above 83, he claims, it threatens the central nervous system. And if you pour the tea at the wrong angle, if the water doesn't swirl clockwise, he'll pause his speech and stare at you, as if you've just betrayed the Reich. Next to the teacup is a plate of unsweetened oatmeal biscuits, spaced exactly 2 centimeters apart, rotated at a 45-degree angle, with the square edge facing where Hitler sits. You're not making this up. Once someone placed them the wrong way, and that person's name was never mentioned again. When the tray is ready, you knock on the door 3 times, no more, no less, and wait for his voice. Rhine. You enter, place the tray on the pre-marked pencil spot on the desk, step back 2 paces, and wait. Hitler sits in the corner, wearing a grey wool robe, collar upright, like armor, hair slightly disheveled in front, looking as if he just won a battle in his dreams. At his feet is Blondie, the German shepherd, fiercely loyal, and the only creature in the bunker allowed to lick Hitler's face without consequences. You must bow to Blondie too. Not greeting her is a breach of etiquette. Greeting her in the wrong tone is a social death sentence. And then, Hitler begins his morning. Not with good morning, or it's chilly today. No, he starts with a monologue, either about the betrayal of his generals, or the Jewish minds poisoning European civilization, or sometimes about how no one in the bunker knows how to arrange books in proper philosophical order. You stand there, notebook in hand, eyes wide, scribbling quickly, ears filtering for words, quotable, in the tonight's proclamation he'll deliver at 10 p.m. Some days, he speaks for 37 minutes straight, others, 3 hours. But the record was when he raged about an improperly ironed soldier's cap, and monologued for 4 hours and 22 minutes about the decline of uniform standards. While he talks, Blondie rests her head on his foot, eyes half closed, occasionally licking the back of his hand with reverence. Hitler strokes her ears as if chairing a summit. You try not to look at his face too long, because that gaze, deep, dark and blazing all at once, is like staring into a wall that knows you're lying. When he gets angry, which happens at least 3 times every morning, the air changes. It gets thicker, hotter. You feel each word he utters like the low rumble of a rocket artillery. He doesn't need to shout, but when he does, when he does, you feel every pore in your body constrict, as if strangled. In those moments, you're no longer human. You're evidence of a historical rage exploding in German, and the cause of his anger could be anything: a late intelligence report, a missing arrow on the map, or someone forgetting to lock the eastern bathroom door. You never know in advance. Once he threw the teacup, not at you, at the wall, then cursed the wall for responding as coldly as the military leadership. Some days he slams the map, stomps on red pins, and screams, "They'll never take Berlin unless they learn to separate water from the earth." You stand there, nodding, scribbling, eyes unblinking, not because you care, but because you're afraid. Because if you miss a single sentence, and he asks, "What did I say about Charlemagne?" you can't say, "I'm sorry." No one apologizes here, they just disappear. And so, every morning passes like a nervous ritual, where you're an unwilling disciple before a dying God who still wants to command the universe. When the morning tea ends, Hitler stops speaking abruptly, looks at you, and waves his hand. Enough. You bow, step back, close the door gently, breathe for the first time in an hour and a half, and realize your shirt is soaked as if you'd swum through a canal. The tea is cold, the biscuits go untouched, but the rage is over, and you're alive, at least until lunch. You've been Hitler's secretary for months, living by his side nearly every hour of the day, but there's one thing you still can't fathom, and no one in this bunker dares ask. Where does Hitler go to the bathroom? Or more precisely, does he ever go to the bathroom? In this bunker, everyone shares 3 tiny bathrooms deep at the end of the corridor. One for men, one for women, one unidentified, because it's been broken since last month. They always smell like an abandoned Roman Empire and feel like stepping into a damp tomb. But Hitler, no one has ever seen him enter one. Not once, not by day, not by night, not after tea, not after 2 hours of lecturing about the greatness of the Aryan race. You were once tasked with cleaning the Führer's private room, a small space behind his main office, with just a sink, a cracked mirror, and an always locked iron door. No toilet, no flush valve. Yet in the duty roster, it's labeled W.C. Führer. Your task: clean it every morning, though it's never dirty. The only thing you wipe is dust. Dust of time, dust of anxiety, dust of blind faith, falling from the concrete ceiling, like ash from a long smoldering idea. Once, you boldly asked a nurse about it. She laughed, not a normal laugh, but one twisted by dread that had eroded her salivary glands, and said, if he has needs, he probably ordered his body not to act on them. Then she walked away, as if she'd just revealed something treasonous. He's sane. There's also a rumor that he uses a secret catheter installed by Dr. Morell under his uniform underwear, a theory both plausible and appetite-destroying for days. Some say he goes at 3 a.m. when no one's awake. Others swear they heard a faint flush once, but it could have been the creak of rusted pipes under Allied bombardment. It's all speculation, because Hitler doesn't excrete, he sublimates. He doesn't defecate, he purifies his spirit. And if you think that's absurd, you haven't lived in a world where he is the truth. As for you, every bathroom trip is a crisis journey. The bathrooms at the bunker's end always have a line. You must pass 2 stone-faced SS officers, time your move to avoid overlapping with meetings, or Hitler's sudden urge to monologue. You can't be gone too long. People will ask, where was she? And if the answer is bathroom, the next question is, why, at that exact moment? You made that mistake once. During a morning meeting, you left your chair for just 3 minutes. When you returned, Hitler asked, what were you doing? You stammered, I'm sorry, I needed to go for a moment. He looked at you as if you just admitted to being an Allied spy, then coldly said, when one truly serves the ideal, the body learns to obey. From that day, you drank less water, very little. No tea, no soup, no salt to retain water. You trained yourself in biological self-regulation, as if you were a failed clone of him, a lesser Führer, not divine enough to skip excretion, but not foolish enough to admit you're merely human. In this bunker, Everyone learns to stay silent about things too. Mundane. The hallway smells damp, musky, with a hint of methane mixed with cheap tobacco smoke, but no one dares name it. You once saw a young soldier emerge pale from the bathroom, swearing he saw a note. If you leave water on the floor again, I'll shoot. No signature. But everyone knew it wasn't a joke. This bunker has no room for the body, only for willpower, and the Führer is the ultimate embodiment of that willpower. A willpower that doesn't use the bathroom, doesn't sweat, doesn't cough, doesn't doze off, doesn't bow. He has one function to exist as a self-replicating idea, unexcreted, unyielding, and you still have intestines, a bladder, a faint fear of leaking during a meeting. You grit your teeth, clench your stomach like a meditator, close your eyes, and imagine you're a rock in the desert. Then, when the lunch bell rings, you exhale, half because you survived, half because you have an excuse to leave your chair. But you don't go right away, never first, because everyone's watching. You've learned to count. Wait for the third person to go, walk at a slow pace, enter the farthest stall, lock the door softly, and when you're done, you wash your hands, dry them, look into the cracked mirror, and whisper, "He's human. He must use the bathroom, surely." But the mirror doesn't answer, and the dripping water behind you sounds like a reminder that in this bunker, biology is betrayal. The leader has no digestive tract, but you're just human, and you must hide that every day. 7:30 a.m. You step into the small dining room between the command area and the secret document bunker, a square room with a low ceiling, lit by dim lights that match the mood of a dictator waking from a dream of imagined victory. No windows, no bird song, just a long wooden table covered with a faintly striped grey cloth and 6 chairs arranged so precisely you'd think the person who set them feared execution for a millimeter's misalignment. Hitler is already seated at the head of the table. You, as usual, sit at the far end, not because you're assigned there, but because no one dares sit near him except Blondie, the German shepherd resting her muzzle on his lap, eyeing you as if she knows how you're surviving. On the table is a carefully arranged emptiness. A plate of black bread as dry as charcoal sponge, a few slices of pickled turnip, a cup of herbal tea gone cold since it was brewed, and a spoonful of honey measured to Dr. Morell's exact specifications. The man who insists refined sugar is a Jewish plot against the Nazi small intestine. You're allowed to take your share from the communal tray, but take is a dangerous term. You must glance at Hitler first, waiting for him to take the first bite. If he frowns, you pause. If he's silent, you proceed, slowly, deliberately, without chewing noises. Once, an SS officer chewed too loudly, causing the Führer to stop, put down his fork, and sit in silence for 5 minutes. That officer was sent on a mission to the east the next day, a place that, according to reports, no longer exists on the map. Hitler doesn't talk while eating. He occasionally nods to the dog, sometimes purses his lips, as if recalculating the entire Western Front campaign, and every now and then glances at you, not with anger, but with a scrutinizing look, as if gauging whether you have enough conviction to gnaw through the brick-like bread. You once thought, in this setting, eating was one of the last remaining pleasures. You were wrong. Here, breakfast isn't for nourishment. It's a performance of power. What Hitler eats, or rather doesn't eat, is a display of purification, of discipline down to the cellular level. No meat, no milk, no caffeine, no cheese, no joy. Each of his meals is a punch against bourgeois eating habits. And you, at the end of the table, must follow suit, not for health, but for survival. In reality, your portion is often scraps from the senior officer's rations, served on a small plate labeled in handwriting, Secretary's Room Ration 3. Each time, you look at the plate, then at yourself, wondering if you're human or an accessory. Some days, there's a piece of old sausage, a food strictly forbidden in Hitler's diet. You glance around, then hide it in your napkin like a culinary criminal. At night, you eat it in your room, as if savoring a dream from another world where people eat to live, not to prove an ideology. Breakfast ends when Hitler stands. No words, no thanks, no eye contact. He gives a slight nod to Blondie, then turns and leaves. You stand after, waiting exactly 7 seconds, then quietly exit, head bowed, still holding an unwashed spoon. Your heart feels as heavy as the coal in his coat pocket. In this bunker, every bite is a moral test. No grimacing, no dropping crumbs, no coughing while swallowing. You once choked on a piece of turnip. You nearly died in silence, too afraid to draw attention. The person next to you just glanced over and kept eating, because coughing is a sign of weakness, and weakness has no place in the Third Reich. So, you finish breakfast in a daze, stomach half hungry, half sad, mind taut like a bowstring. You don't remember the taste, only the sounds, the clink of knife on plate, the soft pour of tea, the steady breathing of a man who believes he's saving the world while the world demands his corpse. In the Führerbunker, you don't eat breakfast. You witness a ritual, and if you're lucky, you survive until lunch, to continue playing the role of a hungry witness to a dying history. 8:12 a.m. above, Berlin is burning. You know this, not because there are windows. The Führerbunker doesn't believe in natural light, but because every few minutes, an explosion echoes down like the gut-wrenching roar of a giant beast nearing death. You feel the slight tremor of the concrete ceiling, dust falling from the cracks, and the muffled screams from the upper level, where some officers still try to maintain contact with the outside, a concept increasingly like a cruel joke. But here, in the small room with a desk, a map, and a capped fountain pen, Hitler is editing. Prose. No, 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 he growls, pointing at the final paragraph of a speech meant for the radio. This sentence sounds like we're compromising. I don't compromise. I resist to the last drop of blood. You nod, fingers poised over the typewriter. He reads again, slowly, as if pulling each word from his veins. We do not retreat. We merely adjust our strategy. You type, but then he frowns. Adjust sounds weak. It must be reshape the battlefield. You quietly delete. As you type reshape, the bunker shakes from a louder than usual explosion. The teacup on the desk rattles. A map falls from the wall, but Hitler doesn't flinch. Don't be distracted, he says, eyes fixed on the text, as if the blast is his personal lullaby. Focus is the weapon of victory. You want to say the Allies' weapons of victory are tanks and artillery, not word choice. But you stay silent, because here any objection is transformed into a display of panic, and panic is treason. Hitler paces, hands clasped behind his back, muttering phrases like he's choosing names for a poem. Valiant, unyielding, sacrifice, unity, iron spirit. He stops, turns to you. We need a stronger word, one that makes German hearts race, inspires. What do you think of immortal? You smile and nod. Very majestic, mein Führer. He's pleased, returns to the desk, sits, adjusts his collar. At that moment, the power flickers. The lights blink. The radio emits a static buzz, then cuts out. The signal's jammed again. You say softly, like a harmless administrative note. But Hitler looks up, his eyes flashing with a mix of anger and paranoia. They're jamming the waves. They don't want the people to hear the truth. You don't know who they are, the British, Americans, Russians, or just the cheap radio bought in 1936. But you nod again. Nodding is survival. Then he returns to the text. I think we need a stronger closing line. It's one that, if these are my last words to the world, will be carved in stone. You ready your hands, he dictates. They may destroy the city, but they cannot destroy the ideal. You type, not missing a beat, and more, he says. Add an introduction about spiritual legacy. Even if I fall, Germany will live. Germans will fight. National Socialism will outlast the pyramids. A piece of the ceiling falls to the floor behind you. You don't turn. You're typing. National Socialism will outlast the pyramids. And as you type pyramids, the lights go out. Pitch black. Only faint light from the hallway seeps through the door crack. Someone shouts. They've reached the Tiergarten. No one in the room moves. Hitler sits still. You stop typing. He speaks, steady as a chant. Don't worry. Wenck's reinforcements are coming. You say nothing. You know General Wenck has abandoned the fight. You know there are no reinforcements. You know Soviet troops are just a few hundred meters from the Reichstag. But you also know Hitler doesn't need truth. He needs confirmation. And you provide it with typewriter keys, with expressionless eyes, with silent presence, amid a reality exploding. When the power returns, Hitler stands, stretches as if he's just completed a grand work. Are you done typing? You nod. Good. Print 3 copies. One for me, one for Goebbels, one for the archives. Use a paperclip. Date it today. They'll need it for the Museum of the Future. You print, you clip, you label, you stamp, and when you hand him the final copy, Hitler smiles, a tired but resolute smile, and says, "Words will endure, shells will not." You bow, leave the room, passing a map singed at the corner from a broken lamp shard. Berlin out there is crumbling, but in his mind, the word victory is still typed in bold, centered, and framed by unshakable belief. And you? You're the one who typed it. And now you wonder, did you just transcribe a testament or sign an indictment for the next century? You're standing by the desk, holding the report you stayed up until 2 a.m. to revise. Every number, every comma, every dash in the ammunition production chart. Because in this bunker, a spelling mistake could be a death sentence. You're trembling, slightly. Not from the cold, though the Führerbunker is always damp, like a morgue basement, but because you know he's about to erupt. You're not sure why, but you can smell it in the air. The metallic tang, mixed with smoldering tobacco smoke, blended with the sweat of people who've lived too long in fear. Hitler takes the report, his eyes scanning quickly, lips pursed. No one speaks. The room seems to hold its breath. Then, he stops at page 6, frowning. Why is this number different from yesterday's? You look down. Page 6. The column for remaining artillery shells at Station 4. You remember correcting it based on General Jodl's updated figures. He handed you the revision himself. But you can't say that. Never mention another's name when he's angry. You swallow hard. Mein Führer. Those are the latest figures sent from the operations room. He throws the report onto the desk. The paper bounces, sliding toward your feet. I don't need the latest numbers. I need the right ones, he shouts. The rage explodes like a shell hitting your chest. No one in the room moves. You try to keep your face neutral, gripping another document as if it could shield you from Odin's hammer. Hitler stands, pacing, his hands gesturing, as if commanding an imaginary army. Why don't you people understand? I'm not surrounded because of ammunition. It's because of betrayal. Betrayal in every number, every comma. Officers who just nod and punch keys, too spineless to face the truth. You want to remind him he banned people from telling the truth. But you're not foolish. You've seen the eyes of the previous secretary, the one who suggested clarifying some inconsistencies in the logistics report before she vanished. No one mentions her anymore. You don't even dare think her name. Hitler's rage is a physical phenomenon. It's not ordinary anger, not the irritation of cold tea. It's an earthquake from deep within, a chemical reaction of power and despair. It turns everything around it into kindling. And you did nothing wrong, but you're close by. And that's enough. You were the final editor, weren't you? He asks, his eyes sweeping over you like radar. You nod. Of course it's you. Who else? The one who provided the figures is hiding at his wife's house. The one who checked them is out sick with an earache. And you, the typist, the proofreader, the one too low-ranking to dodge, are the perfect sacrificial lamb. He roars. Do you know how many soldiers died because of wrong numbers? How many fronts collapsed because trust was misplaced? You nod. You say, Mein Führer, I take responsibility. It's the only sentence you can say in this situation. A selfless plea requiring no conditions. Hitler falls silent. The room waits. Even Blondie, the loyal dog, holds her breath. He steps slowly toward you. His eyes, once capable of driving millions into a frenzy, are now bloodshot, rimmed with exhaustion, but still strong enough to incinerate your fragile courage. Do you know why I keep you here? He asks. You shake your head, cautiously, because you don't argue. You don't make excuses. You take responsibility. He turns away, whispering as if to himself, there aren't many like that left. Then he sits, sighs and waves his hand. Go, but fix that report. And don't let me find another mistake. You bow, step back, hands shaking, as if you've just escaped a live wire. You leave the room, close the door softly, and lean against the wall, heart pounding like a drum. You're still alive. But you understand in this bunker, survival doesn't come from skill, but from knowing when to stay silent, when to bow, and when to be ready to take the blame for a madness that's lost control. You're not recognized, you're not thanked, but you exist, and in this world, that's a victory. A sad, fleeting, bitter victory, but still a victory. 9 a.m. strategy meeting time. In a normal world, people would sit around a table, spread out maps, compare updates, propose solutions, and take clear minutes. But here, in the Führerbunker, under a burning Berlin, strategy meeting is a colossal tragedy, replayed with the same script. Hitler as the prophet, the generals as a nodding chorus, and you, the only typist, tasked with recording every nonsensical word as if it's absolute truth. The meeting room is cramped, low-ceilinged, its four walls covered with tattered, folded, pinned-up maps, like relics of a reality constantly rewritten to fit delusions. On the table is a wooden model of Germany, with army units marked by small flag pins, red for Germany, blue for the Allies, white for hope zones. The blue pins grow daily. The red ones shift each morning, for the Führer's spiritual directive. You sit at the table's corner, typewriter ready, hands poised, eyes locked on the speaker, ears taut like guitar strings. Hitler enters at exactly 9 a.m., not a second late. He doesn't sit. He stands at the head of the table, hands braced on the map, eyes scanning the waiting faces, like students entering an exam. "We are not losing," he begins, voice hard as steel. "We are preparing for a historic counterattack. If only you all do your jobs correctly." You start typing. First line of the minutes. The Führer reaffirms faith in decisive victory. You don't add in parentheses, though 2 hours ago, Berlin lost 5 more districts. The sentences that follow are a bizarre mix of orders, fantasies, and philosophy. General Steiner will mobilize all forces for a counterattack from the north. A pin falls to the floor. An officer dropped the red pin marking Steiner's division. An army. Everyone knows disintegrated last week. No one picks it up. No one mentions it. Everyone nods. You keep typing, hands stiff as machinery. Hitler continues. The Spree defense line is impregnable. General Wenck is advancing on Berlin from the west. Don't worry, he'll relieve us on time. You glance briefly at the room's corner. A veteran colonel's eyes flicker in a reflex of pain. Everyone knows Wenck has retreated, but in this room, reality has no speaking rights. Hitler adds, "The people remain loyal. Their spirit is unbroken. We just need to keep the media steady." Goebbels nods, scribbling something in his notebook with a black fountain pen, perhaps an order to deal with a radio station that broadcast too realistically. You type another line. The Führer demands psychological stability among the populace. You don't add, the populace no longer has electricity to hear the radio. The meeting continues in a fever of ideals. Everyone speaks in empty, verbose phrases. We will reorganize the logistics supply line with unwavering National Socialist resolve, or we pledge to hold the front at all humane and inhumane costs if needed. You type relentlessly. Each word is a brick added to the wall, separating him from reality, and you're the one spreading the mortar. Then comes the open discussion part. No one dares speak the truth. A colonel suggests adjusting strategic positions to optimize counterattack timing. Everyone knows it means retreat, but he says it like reciting a poem to the party. Hitler stares at him for 6 seconds, then continues, as if he heard nothing. No one revisits the suggestion. The map stays unchanged. Red pins stay put. Blue pins are ignored. You type, not missing a word. The minutes span 7 pages. None contain truth. At the meeting's end, Hitler closes with a mantra-like line, "History will remember those who never yield." Everyone stands chanting Hail Hitler, like devout worshippers. You stand last, the final page freshly printed, still warm in your hands. You hand a copy to Goebbels' aide, then retreat to the typing room, carefully filing the other 2 copies in a folder, stamping them top secret, and placing them in a drawer, holding nearly 100 similar documents, fanciful plans born to kill time, mask failure, and prolong the silence of reason. You wonder if anyone will ever read them, if anyone will find them, and think the people in this bunker truly believed what they said. But you know, most don't believe. They're just too afraid not to nod. And you, the one recording every word, every delusion, every logical slight in these 4 concrete walls, understand in this bunker, reality isn't killed, it's deported. And you, every day, sign its sentence. You're starting to feel the bunker's ceiling get a little lower each day, not because it's actually collapsing, though the new cracks in the concrete ceiling give you good reason to believe it might, but because the air is thickening, as if the oxygen itself wants to escape this place. The bunker, already cramped, damp, and perpetually sunless, now seems to be shrinking, closing in around you like a steel trap, locked by paranoia, sealed by silence, and cemented by fear. You walk the same hallway every day, past the same faded propaganda posters on the walls, under the same round light bulb, casting a glow like dead skin, but everything feels closer together. The walls seem to press in tighter. The ceiling feels a hand's breadth lower. You haven't grown taller. In fact, you've lost weight, but each time you enter the document room, your head nearly brushes the light bulb, and it's not just a feeling. Others sense it too, though no one says it. They just meet your gaze when you look at them. The quiet eyes of voluntary prisoners, all living in a giant, unclosed coffin. You hear whispers, not loud, not clear, but there, maybe from the ventilation room, maybe from behind the wall, with the maps, maybe from inside your own head, overloaded with illogical statements from men who call themselves generals. Someone says they saw an SS soldier enter the night watch room and never come out. Someone claims Goebbels has a key to a storage room no one else can open. Someone swears they saw a classified file burned in the medical room at midnight, deemed too dangerous to exist. You don't know what's real anymore, and the scariest part isn't the lies. It's that you're starting to accept them as normal, like the moldy walls, like the cold tea, like how Hitler can shift from delusion to speech, to eating oatmeal biscuits in a single breath. One day, as you pass through the hallway, you notice a closed door, one that was open yesterday. You lean closer. No sound, but when you touch the handle, it feels faintly warm. You're about to knock when a guard appears from nowhere, standing in your way. He says nothing, just looks, not threatening, not friendly, just a warning, as if to say, don't open it. It's not for you. You nod, step back, and take another route. From then on, you notice that door seems to change location. The next day, it's near the technical room. The day after, near the electrical closet. You're not sure. Either you've lost your sense of direction, or the bunker is truly reshaping itself. Maybe both. Then the nightmares start. Each time you doze off in the small break room, just a corner with a wooden chair and an old curtain, you dream of the ceiling slowly collapsing, pressing down on your chest. You scream. No one hears. You thrash. And when you wake, cold sweat soaking your back, you see the ceiling, silent, still there. But you're no longer sure it'll stay put until tomorrow. Space is no longer physical, it's psychological. One time, you're alone in the typing room. Absolute silence. No one around. You hear the clock ticking, and suddenly it's unbearably loud, as if each second is shouting, it's almost over, it's almost over, it's almost over, it's almost over. You stand, pace the room, touch the walls, count your steps. 12 steps from the door to the desk. Yesterday, you're sure it was 13. You measure again. 12. Either you counted wrong, or the room really shrank, or your mind is crumpling like the ceiling above. Then there's a rumor that Hitler is building a secret room below the bunker, the final level, where he'll retreat to meditate, if everything collapses. They call it the time room. No one's seen it, but some swear they heard drilling at 2 a.m. You don't know who to believe. You only trust one thing. Each day you wake, the Führerbunker feels a little tighter, a little darker, a little closer to nameless panic. You vaguely feel you're no longer living in a shelter, but in the stomach of a monster, and it's digesting you, slowly with the rhythm of typewriter keys and the silent footsteps in the hallway. Eva Braun enters the bunker like she's stepping into a spring tea party in Salzburg, despite the bombs above, the madness below, and the men around her who've lost both hope and their maps. You don't know exactly when she appeared, just that one day, while you were sorting papers for Goebbels, she glided through the hallway in a cream silk dress, her hair perfectly curled, her worn high heels clicking softly as if tapping the weary heart of the bunker. Eva doesn't speak loudly. She doesn't need to. Her presence is a whisper with weight. People avoid her gaze, not out of fear, but because they don't know what emotion to meet it with. What is she in all this? The Führer's lover, the beautiful shadow behind his rage, a flower pinned to a rusted gun barrel. She greets you with a faint smile, neither fake nor real, the smile of a woman used to living in the buffer zone between grace and doom. Once, she invites you for tea. You don't refuse. No one refuses. Eva Braun. The tea takes place in a small room called the living area, really just a narrow space with an old sofa, a tea table, and two silk-covered chairs faded to grey. On the table is a white porcelain teapot, 2 cups, a plate of crumbled biscuits, and in the middle, lying quietly like part of the decor, a small Walther PPK pistol, placed next to the flower vase. You don't ask. She doesn't explain. You sit across from each other. She pours the tea. Neither speaks for a minute. Then she asks, "Do you think it'll all end soon?" You don't know how to answer. You don't know what it all means. The war, the marriage, or this underground life. Eva smiles. I used to think I'd get married in Obersalzberg, the beautiful sunlight, pine forests. I planned to wear a simple white dress, but with lace. Not too fancy. She sips her tea, then looks at you. What about you? If you got married, what would you wear? You give a weak smile, avoiding her eyes, gripping the teacup, as if to confirm you're still alive. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Eva nods. I don't think about it anymore either. Maybe it's not necessary. She stands, walks around the room. He doesn't make promises, doesn't talk about the future. But I stay. Strange, isn't it? She turns back, her eyes shimmering but not weak. I know people think I'm foolish, or blind, or just a decoration. Maybe they're right. But at least I chose to stay. In a world where men decide everything, I decided the one thing they can't forbid: my place. You look at her, the only woman in the bunker with no power, no authority, yet present like a reminder that behind every empire is someone who knows it's collapsing. Eva doesn't talk politics. She doesn't discuss strategy. But you sense in her a strange clarity, as if she sees it all, just doesn't need to shout it. Every morning, she still puts on makeup, changes her dress, sprays perfume, the only perfume left in the bunker, a faint scent of ash and jasmine, clinging to the walls, the chairs, your memory. Once you saw her standing alone in the hallway, staring into a cloudy mirror on an iron door, not fixing her hair, not adjusting her dress, just standing, looking, as if trying to imagine what her face would look like after it all ends. Eva doesn't cry. You've never seen her shed a tear. Not when Hitler shouts, not when news from the East reports Soviet tanks crossing the Spree, not when they start burning documents by the pile. She sits calmly, knitting, reading a small book, or simply existing, like a gentle shadow of a ruined tomorrow. And you understand, wordlessly, that she's not foolish. She knows everything. She just accepts it, with the most beautiful poise possible. Maybe that's her rebellion. Maybe that's her love. Maybe that's a tragedy greater than bombs, being the bride of a man who married his own delusion, yet choosing to stay with him until the end. Eva Braun, the girl who never got to be a wife, but is ready to die as one, drinks tea with you, then sees you to the door, saying in the softest voice in the bunker, "Tomorrow, if I'm gone, keep this handkerchief. It's real." You nod, holding the small silk cloth she hands you, your heart heavy, as if grasping the last fragile piece of humanity at the edge of history. Then you step out, closing the door softly behind you, knowing it might be the last time you see a woman smile amid the ruins, still called an empire. Evenings in the Führerbunker have no sunset, no croaking frogs, no glasses of wine or lavish dinners by candlelight. Instead, you have a dusty projector, a white-painted wall posing as a screen, a creaking wooden bench, and a man losing the world but insisting on watching movies as if he's still hosting a Nazi film festival. At 8 p.m. sharp as usual, you're summoned to the screening room, really just an old meeting room, repurposed as Hitler's personal cinema. The chairs are arranged in 2 rows, with few occupants, to Goebbels always in the front row, like a propaganda film fanatic. Sometimes Eva Braun, eyes on the screen, but mind clearly somewhere beyond the apocalypse. A few SS officers honored as audience, and you tasked with operating the projector and noting the Führer's artistic critiques during the viewing. Tonight, it's a cartoon, specifically Bambi. Yes, that's right, as Berlin turns to ash, as entire neighborhoods become blackened steel skeletons, Adolf Hitler, the man who wrote Mein Kampf in ink and blood, chooses to watch a fawn lose its mother. You're used to paradoxes. He loves Disney, not just likes, almost worships it. He calls it pure, untainted, uncorrupted by modern decadent ideologies. You're not sure if he overlooks that Walt Disney is American, but perhaps in his mind, Disney belongs to a parallel world where Germany won the First World War, and humanity still wears helmets to picnics. You start the projector, light hits the wall, the familiar hum fills the room, and the film begins. Hitler sits still, hands clasped, eyes unblinking. The green forest appears, Bambi's mother appears, death appears. He doesn't cry, never does. But you notice his hands tighten each time. Bambi calls, "Mother." A moment later he mutters, "We're like that, left alone in the snow." You don't know if it's philosophy, allegory, or delusion. You nod slightly, as always. After the cartoon ends, he often requests a propaganda film, Triumph of the Will, or Kohlberg. Some nights, he re-watches The Eternal Jew, the chilling anti-Semitic propaganda, and nods as if he's just heard a symphony. You've asked yourself silently, how can someone cry for Bambi and order the execution of millions? Then you realize he sees no contradiction. In Hitler's world, emotions aren't governed by morality, but by ideology. He doesn't weep for life. He weeps for his own shattered dream. Some movie nights drag on until 11 p.m. No one leaves before he does. Once, an officer asked to step out for a headache. The next morning, he was reassigned to the archives, which accidentally collapsed under shelling. Since then, no one has headaches. No one yawns. No one breathes loudly. You've learned to watch films with a perfectly neutral face. Eyes open, mouth closed, no smiles, no flinches when characters are shot. Even Ava has mastered it. She sits still, hands on her lap, eyes on the screen, as if gazing through a window to her old Munich apartment, where, in another reality, she might be sipping wine and complaining about the weather. But no, she's sitting next to a man who might order his own body burned tomorrow. And you, the only one recording his film schedule, write clearly. Wednesday, Bambi. Thursday, Die Grosse Liebe. Friday, TBD. Once, you suggested an old French film mistakenly, without checking the title. When Hitler realized it was a romance between a Parisian girl and a deserting German soldier, he erupted mid-second reel, shut off the projector, threw the script at the wall, and shouted, "Betrayal must not be romanticized." You nearly got reassigned to logistics, hauling sandbags and dying of lung disease. Since then, you only pick films he's pre-approved. No risks, no creativity. You're a machine projecting memories for a man forgetting the present. And as the night passes, as the film ends, as the projector's hum fades, as Hitler stands without a word, you turn it off, collect the reel, and look at the wall, where happy faces, fawns and forests just played, now just a blank haze, like an empty tombstone, waiting for a name. The movie session ends. The apocalypse continues. You don't know who first suggested adding activated charcoal to Hitler's diet, but they're surely not alive to tell the tale. Every morning, when you arrive early to prepare documents, you find the familiar silver tray on the desk, a cup of cold herbal tea, a slice of unsalted black bread, a jar of organic honey in a ceramic-lidded glass container, and beside it, 2 jet black charcoal tablets, small as shirt buttons, which, per Dr. Morel, provide absolute purification for a genius leadership machine. Hitler is vegetarian, but not the gentle green living kind you'd find in lifestyle books. He eats vegetarianism as a political act, part of his ideal, part strategic manifesto. "Meat is a corpse," he once said, eyes unblinking, "and I need no corpses in my body, not even in my stomach." His lunch is usually overboiled vegetables, sometimes mashed like porridge, sometimes just pickled cucumbers with steamed potatoes. No garlic, no onions, no pepper, no oil, seasoning, heresy, fish sauce, a crime against National Socialism. Every dish is rigorously checked by one of the female tasters, unofficially dubbed the sisters sacrificing stomachs for the Führer. You once heard one say that tasting food daily cost her both her sense of taste and her faith in life. But at least I'm still alive. When the food is served, Hitler doesn't eat right away. He stares at the plate for a few seconds, as if waiting for it to confess its ingredients before starting. You've been there a few times, standing 2 meters from the table, notebook in hand to record feedback if needed. Every bite he takes is silent. He chews like a monk. No sound, no change in expression. Occasionally, he pauses, nods, and says, "Very good. It feels like eating purity." You're not sure what purity tastes like, but you swear unsalted boiled potatoes, only make you ponder life's futility, not enlightenment. Some days, he drinks carrot juice mixed with apple cider vinegar, what Morel calls the Führer's nervous system vitality tonic. After drinking, he goes quiet, eyes half closed, then suddenly spouts a Nietzsche quote, as if directly wired to cosmic wisdom. But you know what really works is belief, a nutrient stronger than any protein, calcium, or vitamin. He doesn't eat from hunger, he eats to feel exceptional. And if the world crumbles in war, at least he can say, I never touched a sausage. You, sitting at the staff table in the kitchen corner, eat watery porridge with stale bread, glance at his meal, equally bland, but served on porcelain with a napkin, a waiter, and reverent gazes, and realize the issue isn't the food's quality, it's the power to choose to eat like that. Some days, you're tasked with recording post-meal physiological reactions, a job both absurd and dangerous. Hitler finishes eating, sits silently, stares into the distance, and you must guess whether his silence is philosophical musing or his gut cramping from too many turnips. You once miswrote that he seemed displeased. The next morning, you were called to Morel's office to explain why you used disloyal wording. You learned your lesson. After that, every report ended with positive reaction, stable spirit, food support, strategic intellect. Once he asked you, what do you think of this diet? You swallowed hard. Mein Führer, it's very noble. He smiled. Exactly. Food is a weapon. Only the weak need cheese and red meat to comfort themselves. You nodded. You didn't mention that last night. You secretly ate an old sausage in the electrical room, crying as if committing a crime. Hitler doesn't know, and if he did, he'd likely call you a slave to instinct or a relic of a decadent era. But you don't care, because after documenting his healthy eating habits, you still rush to the toilet after meetings with stomach pains, something Hitler would firmly deny exists. Maybe he truly feels no pain. Maybe he's transcended all physiological limits. Or maybe he's just better at pretending than anyone else in this bunker. And you, witnessing every flavorless meal, every charcoal tablet swallowed like a willpower candy, every speech after a bite of boiled turnip, start to understand in the Führerbunker, food isn't for satiety. It's for asserting one final thing that even in defeat, one can eat like a god without a stomach. You start keeping a diary not because you're a romantic, nor because you want to record history from the inside, but simply because if you don't write, you fear your head will explode. Your wardrobe, a narrow wooden compartment tucked in the corner of the small break room, becomes your only sanctuary where you can close the door, turn off the flashlight, curl up, and place the yellowed notebook, hidden under your coat's lining, on your knees. Its contents aren't profound. No literature, no poetry, no political critique, just the first line, I'm still alive, and that's the only thing you can confirm each night. In this bunker, every truth is distorted, every word is edited, every glance is watched, but the page is still yours, at least until someone finds it. You don't write names, no signatures, no places, no specific dates, just impressions. The day with more bombs than usual, the day Hitler said tanks were coming from the north, though the map no longer has a north. The day Eva smiled sadly, and then didn't appear again. You write with an old fountain pen, its nib slightly chipped, needing to be tilted to produce even strokes. You write with your left hand, because your right must always be ready to grab files when someone knocks. Some days your hand shakes as you write, because the other just held a casualty report, numbers too vast to be numbers, too meaningless to be counted. You write what you don't dare say, like how you saw an officer trembling as he shot himself in the foot, just to be taken out of the bunker, or how you passed the storage room and heard a man sobbing, only to find a pair of wet gloves when you opened the door. You write about Blondie, Hitler's loyal dog, scratching at the door all night, as if it too knew something was ending that no one would admit. Once you wrote 7 pages just to describe Hitler's eyes during a meeting, no longer angry, no longer blazing, but strangely empty, like a lamp just switched off but not yet cooled. You wrote that you fear he'll kill himself. Then you revised it. I fear he won't kill himself. I fear he'll live forever, in speeches, broadcasts, statues built by those who don't understand he's already lost. You know your diary, if found, would be deemed subversive, even treasonous. But you keep writing, not out of bravery, but because you need a place to set down your fear before carrying it again the next morning, standing outside the meeting room. Some days you stop mid-sentence, hand aching, eyes dry, but you don't dare sleep. You lean against the wardrobe wall, close your eyes for 3 minutes, then open them, and write again. Sometimes you write just one line, "I can't take it anymore." Then the next day, you add, "But I'm still here." You record trivial things like someone stealing reserve bread, the meeting room light flickering as if signaling something coming, people starting to avoid eye contact in the hallway. You write about the explosions above, echoing like faint calls from the real world, about the bunker shrinking daily, about a dream where your mother stood in a market, whispering your name, her voice never loud enough. And you write the biggest question you haven't dared voice. Do I even deserve to survive? Because you know survival is a privilege, but it comes with a burden, the burden of witnessing, the burden of silence, the burden of being the loyal scribe for a story that never should have happened. One night, writing on page 54, you pause, hearing footsteps in the hallway, very soft, very slow. You turn off the flashlight, stay silent. The steps pass. You flip it back on, turn the page, and write one last line. "I've learned to hold my breath for 17 seconds. Maybe I'll need it tomorrow." Then you close the notebook, tuck it into the wooden crevice behind the coat hook, cover it with your coat, step out of the wardrobe, fix your hair, open the door, and return to the hallway, with a blank face and a pace just quick enough not to raise suspicion. The diary stays behind, not as a historical record, but as the silent confession of a person trying not to melt away with the world's end. They smile, but not the kind that makes you feel safe. Not a greeting smile, not the awkward courtesy when sharing dry biscuits in the bunker's small kitchen. No, the SS officers in this bunker smile differently. A slight stretch of facial muscles, no teeth shown, no sound, no crinkle at the eyes, a smile like a vein cut under taut skin. You noticed it in your 3rd week here. At first you thought you were imagining it, but then you saw, each time you passed through the hallway, one of them, always in a flawless black uniform, boots polished to a mirror shine, turns to look at you, head slightly tilted, lips pressed into a thin line curving just enough. And they don't blink. They don't ask where you're going. They don't block your path. They just stand there, silently, as if you're a package being inspected one last time before being sealed. Once, you entered the meeting room 2 minutes late. Hitler wasn't there yet, but 3 SS officers stood along the wall. One, whom you only know as Führer Keller, turned to look at you. Grey eyes, his smile unfurled slowly. No greeting, no nod, just a look, as if he'd found a reason to add your name to a list no one wants to be on. You never arrived late again, never walked too fast, never spoke in the hallway, even to colleagues. Everyone knows the SS's ears aren't on their heads, they're scattered across the walls. A sigh could become a sentence if it reaches the wrong ears. Another time, waiting for the elevator to deliver files, an SS officer, you don't recall his name, only the mole on his right cheek, stepped up behind you, silent. You tried not to breathe heavily. The elevator light flickered. Then he said softly, "How long have you worked for the Führer?" You turned, forcing a smile. "I'm just a secretary." He nodded, smile unchanged. Secretaries know the most. You didn't know how to respond. It wasn't a compliment, not small talk. It was a reminder you're tightrope walking over an abyss, with someone else's blade beneath your feet. You started calling it the toothless smile in your head. Not because they lack teeth, theirs are white, perfectly even, but because they never show them. What's hidden behind those lips is what's terrifying. Because in this bunker, what's kept behind a mouth can kill you. Some say every SS officer has their own list. Unofficial, unwritten, but they remember. Who said what? Who sighed when Goering left? Who looked at Eva Braun too long? Who said victory without enough conviction? A radio operator vanished after laughing at the wrong moment. During Hitler's story about being whipped by a teacher as a child, no one confirmed it was the reason. But no one laughed again after that. You can't remember the last time you genuinely smiled. Maybe last month, when you got a parcel from your mother. Just a blurry, water-damaged photo, but you smiled for less than 10 seconds. Then you remembered the mail scanner might be watching, and you stopped. SS officers don't need guns to threaten. Their presence is the weapon. The leather gloves, the low voice, the eyes reflecting nothing, and the smile that never breaks. You once dreamed you sat across from one, both drinking tea. You offered a biscuit. He didn't take it. He just smiled, then opened his mouth. No teeth, just a black void. You woke, heart pounding like war drums, sweat soaking your back. That morning, you wrote in your diary, "Nightmares have no blood, only absence." You've learned to move as if invisible, speak as if breathless, work as if memoryless. Because here, what kills you isn't bombs or hunger, it's the wrong person's smile at the right moment. And if one day an SS officer looks at you, tilts their head, purses their lips, and says nothing, you know the only thing you can do is smile back. No teeth, no words, no hope, but alive, at least for today. Lunch in the Führerbunker always happens at exactly 1 p.m., not a moment early or late, as if the world outside could turn to ash. But Adolf Hitler's biological clock must still be served a slice of potato on time. The dining room is the same one you know too well, dim lighting, a flaking oil painting, a long wooden table with a grey-green tablecloth faded from bleach and fear. You arrive 10 minutes early, as always, to check the menu, not because you care what's served, but because you need to ensure nothing strange is present. There's a rumor in the bunker that someone is trying to poison Hitler. No one knows who. Maybe the cook, maybe the waiter, maybe Hitler himself, maybe you. Since that rumor, no one dares eat before Hitler, or after. Everyone waits. He sits, studies his plate like it's a Renaissance painting, then gives a slight nod, the signal. Others pick up their forks. You, seated 2 chairs to his left, observe without letting your eyes betray you. Today's menu: stewed spinach, a few slices of boiled potato, a bowl of clear broth with bits of turnip floating like reconnaissance soldiers. Hitler eats small bites, silent. You do the same. But you notice his hand trembles slightly. Not much, just a flicker, but enough to stir unease in you. Something's off, either in the food or in him. Eva isn't here today. Some say she's unwell, others say she's writing a farewell letter. You don't ask. The fewer questions in this place, the longer you live. You sip a spoonful of broth, saltier than yesterday. You glance at the waiter, his face taut like a guitar string. You glance at the table's corner, where an emergency antidote syringe always sits. Today, there are 2. Usually there's 1. You lower your head, keep eating, chewing without tasting. Each bite is a game of fate. Is this turnip or poisoned turnip? Is this broth or slow-boiled venom? You recall the last time a secretary from the administrative office fainted after lunch. They said she was sleep-deprived. But you know she misnamed General Guderian in that morning's report. You also know no one saw her the next day. Hitler is saying something. You're not sure what. His voice is low, steady, words dripping like honey on a blade. Maybe he's commenting on the front lines. Maybe philosophy. Maybe a monologue about betrayal. You don't dare ask. You just jot down a few words in your notebook like a reflex. Your hand feels numb. Your throat is dry. You look at the glass of water, brought from the bunker's deep reservoir, and hesitate for 3 seconds before drinking. Then you drink. It tastes odd. You can't tell if it's chlorine, iron, or just your fear rising like an invisible toxin. Once, Hitler said, "The strong cannot be poisoned. Their will neutralizes the venom." You don't know if that's philosophy or delusion, but you understand one thing: if you die from poisoning, you're weak, and no one mourns the weak in this bunker. Goebbels chews slowly, eyes darting around. His wife doesn't eat, just sits with a faint smile, like a forgotten wind-up doll. An SS officer sneezes. The table freezes for 2 seconds, not from fear of contagion, but because no one's sure if it's a sneeze or a sign of rebellion. You finish eating, set down your knife and fork, wipe your mouth with a neatly folded paper napkin. As always, not too slow, not too fast. You can't draw attention. After lunch, Hitler stands, says nothing, and leaves the room like a satisfied ghost. You and the others stand too. Each returns to their post, carrying a stomach both full and empty. In the hallway, you hear someone retching behind a door. You don't know if it's fear, poison, or both. You don't stop. You're not allowed to stop. In the Führerbunker, lunch isn't for nourishment. It's a survival ritual, a collective poison test. Every day, every person, and you surviving a whiff of poison not yet strong enough. Move on, with a stomach still intact and a heart already calloused. When Hitler rages, you don't hear him first. You feel it. The air shifts. The room's temperature drops a few degrees, not from cold, but because everyone stops breathing at once. The bunker's concrete walls, 4 meters thick and nearly soundproof, can't stop his fury from piercing through physics. You've stood in the hallway, 2 iron doors away from the meeting room, and still heard his shouts echo, not the sound of a man losing, but of a god who thinks fate itself has betrayed him. That morning, as usual, you brought the military report from headquarters. The news is catastrophic. Soviet troops are nearing the Weiden-Damme bridge, no retreat routes remain, and General Wenk's reinforcements are impossible. You hand the report to Bormann and retreat to your typing post in the room's corner. You don't want to take notes today, but you must. It's your job to record every word he speaks, every hiss, every syllable he hurls like artillery shells. The meeting starts quietly, only a few wary glances are exchanged. Hitler sits, his gaunt hands clenched, eyes glaring at the map as if staring long enough could erase the red units. Then he leaps up, and the first sound isn't his voice, it's his hand slamming the table, so hard the teacup spills. Betrayal, he roars, the word tearing from his throat like bottled-up thunder. We're not losing because the enemy is strong, but because of the cowards around me. Everyone bows their heads. You don't dare look up. Hitler begins pacing around the table, pointing at each general. Guderian? Where is he? Steiner? Why hasn't anyone told me his division was destroyed? Are you afraid? Do you think I'm too weak to handle the truth? No one answers. Every answer is wrong. He continues, storming to the wall, slamming his hand against the cold concrete. This wall is stronger than you. At least it doesn't lie to me. Then he turns, hair disheveled, face flushed, lips trembling, not from weakness, but from rage. He looks at you, silently typing. His gaze feels like a blade pressed against your sternum. You, write it down, write it all, so history knows I was betrayed by my own command. You nod, hands shake, eyes blur, but you type each word as if your life depends on those clacks. Then he shouts again, this time more breath than words. I gave you everything, honor, pride, purpose, and now you shrink back like rats. Someone breathes heavily, just once. Hitler turns, his eyes seem ready to explode. Then he staggers back to the table, slumping for a moment. You think he's exhausted, but no, he lifts his head, voice now hoarse but sharp as a knife. They don't know who I am. They think taking Berlin is victory. No, victory is when my ideology dies. And it will not die. You keep typing. No one in the room is truly alive. All are zombies awaiting release. Hitler turns to the wall, presses his forehead against it, whispering as if about to faint. I dreamed once. A Germany without weakness. A people who don't bow. And now, I see it crumble, because of the cowardice of those in this room. He punches the wall one last time. The sound rings like a funeral bell. The wall doesn't crack. But if it had a soul, you believe it would scream, not from anger, but from exhaustion. Hitler returns to his chair, sits, silence, no one dares move. Then he looks at you, nods slightly. That's enough. You've recorded it all. Don't miss a word. You nod. Yes, mein Führer. You print the transcript, hands still trembling, hand it to the aide, then leave, stepping out of the room where reality has died, leaving only the echo of delusion. You lean against the wall, heart pounding like a war drum. You realize you've just transcribed a death rattle in words. And in those minutes of Hitler shouting at the wall, you saw clearly, no answer is right anymore. Only echoes remain, and you quietly copying them into history. Know this, the wall can't cry, but you can. You're standing in the technical room, surrounded by duplicate electrical maps, ventilation pipes, and switches no one has dared touch since last month, for fear of triggering something that could collapse the bunker. In your hand is a harmless stack of files, but your eyes are fixed on the steel door leading to the emergency hallway. It's locked, but it could be opened. You know that. And that's when the thought sparks, or rather flickers like a brief flame in an endless night. You could escape, right now. Run through that door, up the spiral stairs, past the power station, through the storage room, and if you're lucky enough not to be caught by the guards, you could reach the surface. You haven't been above ground since the day you first entered the Führerbunker. You don't remember what Berlin looks like anymore. You only hear the bombs, smell the smoke, sometimes see dust falling, like thin snow from the bunker's ceiling. But now in this moment, you can imagine it. wind on your face, a grey sky, or sun, or fire, anything, as long as it's real. No more artificial fluorescent lights. No more hallways silent as tombs. No more of Hitler's shouts or the clatter of your trembling typewriter. You picture yourself weaving through the rubble, empty-handed, or clutching the small diary hidden in your coat. You'd pose as a nurse, or a reporter, or, you don't know, you don't care, just escape. And then, just as you think you might actually do it, you laugh. Not a joyful laugh, not a bitter one, a crazed laugh, small, dry, suppressed, but ringing like a final confession. You know you're not going anywhere. You can't, not because you fear being shot, not because you don't know the way, but because you understand there's no outside to go to anymore. Berlin has become a volcano's mouth, and you're just a speck of ash, misplaced in the jaws of a monster. And the Führerbunker, hell though it is the only place you know how to navigate. You know where to avoid the SS's gaze. You know when Hitler needs tea, when he wants to vent his rage on the walls. You know which sound is a bomb, which is artillery, and which is a door closing behind someone who never returns. Out there, you're a nobody. In here, you're the Führer's secretary. You don't want the title, but it keeps you alive. You laugh, still holding the files, then place them back exactly where they belong. You turn from the steel door, walk slowly toward the main hallway, where the dim yellow light flickers, like the pulse of someone delirious. A guard passes by. He glances at you, says nothing. You nod slightly. He doesn't react. You don't know if his look means I understand, or I'm watching you.
You don't ask.
You just keep walking. Escape, you think, doesn't have to happen with your feet. It happens in your mind. With every thought you refuse to believe. With every time you close your eyes and imagine sitting in that old Leipzig cafe, reading a book all afternoon, without fearing death for a misplaced comma. Escape is every time you write in your diary and call yourself her to keep distance. It's every time you bite your lip until it bleeds, wanting to scream. We've already lost. Surrender, but instead say, yes, mein Führer, I'll fix the punctuation, and then you return to your room, open the diary, write one line. Today I thought about escaping. Then you cross it out. Rewrite. Today I laughed when I thought about escaping. Then you set the pen down, turn off the light, sit in silence for a moment. No artillery in that moment, just the hum of the ventilation fan, like a distorted lullaby. And you realize you're not going anywhere. Not because you're weak, not because you lack the chance, but because this place somehow has swallowed the part of you that once believed the outside world still existed. So you lie on the wooden chair, curl up in your thin coat, and dream of stepping out of the bunker, only to find the city gone, just sand, and you walk and walk until a wall appears, solid and cold. On it, words, you've come back. You tap the wall lightly, not expecting an answer. Then you wake. Another day in the Führerbunker, another day of not escaping. You can't remember the last time you saw the sky. How many days has it been? Or months? In the Führerbunker, time doesn't flow. It seeps dripping like water from a leaky pipe, relentless and cold. When night comes, you don't notice because of darkness, but because the typewriters stop, the boots cease marching in the hallway, and Hitler's shouts no longer echo off the walls. Instead, there's silence, a heavy silence that forces you to remind yourself to breathe. But then, in that fragile quiet, a bomb explodes. Not a distant rumble, a deafening roar right against the walls, shaking the bunker like an old ship staggering through a fiery ocean. You lie on the wooden chair under a thin blanket, eyes wide, staring at the concrete ceiling, imagining it should hold a starry sky. But no stars, just smoke, fire, twisting metal, and voices, so many voices, dying inch by inch above ground. You know this, though you're 8 meters underground, you still hear the end. Sometimes you imagine stepping out of the bunker, looking up, and seeing the Milky Way, but the vision dissolves like steam on a window, because you remember no one survives long enough on the surface to look up anymore. Night here doesn't bring sleep, it brings memories, fragmented, jumbled memories, out of order, like a film edited by a mad hand. You see yourself in a lecture hall, holding a book, discussing Kant. Then entering the Führer's office, for the first time, trembling so much you couldn't type. Then laughing at a party with friends now gone, sent somewhere for national duty. You see your mother. She's serving rice. Sunlight streams through a window. Then a bomb rips the image apart, dragging you back to the present, where there's only a cold wall and the ventilation fan's steady hiss, like the breath of delirium. You sit up, don't turn on the light, and fumble for your diary. Then set it down. No need to write anymore. Your emotions have shriveled in your chest. No more tears, no more words. Just one thing, regret, not for being here, but for staying too long, for accepting too much, nodding too often, printing too many reports you knew were lies, recording too many toxic words, and worst of all, you stopped asking questions. You once believed silence was survival, that doing your job would keep you from the whirlwind of history. But now you see, you didn't stand outside it, you were part of it. Every page you typed was a brick in the collective coffin for a nation. And tonight, as bombs keep falling, you realize there's nowhere left to escape, not even within yourself. You stand, walk to the small sink in the room's corner, wash your face with water so cold it numbs. Look into the cracked mirror. You don't recognize yourself. The woman there has shadowed eyes, grey skin, and a silence you've seen in those who've surrendered all resistance. You stare into your own eyes, searching for something, a sign of life, proof you're still human. But nothing, just a reflection, blurry, pale, mute. You turn away, return to the chair, pull the blanket over your chest. Hear the bombs, hear the walls groan, hear history rewriting itself with shells and ash. And you wonder if you survive, what will you say? What will you recount? That you were there, saw it all, heard it all, but did nothing. That you were just a secretary, that you only followed orders. Part of you wants to believe you're blameless. The other part, the one lying still in this starless night, knows that regret arriving late is regret you can never redeem. And so, you close your eyes, not to sleep, but to escape, into a void where memories no longer torment you, for staying too long in a bunker you never should have entered. But it's too late, no stars in the night, just bombs and regret. You find the paper on a damp morning, while gathering files from the meeting table to burn as per Goebbels' orders. It's not part of the stack, not stamped, just an ordinary sheet, folded in half, tucked between two yellowed logistics reports. You nearly toss it into the burn pile, but your hand pauses, as if the paper itself whispers, "Read me first." And you do. The handwritten lines, in purple ink, are neat yet hurried, as if written in the dark, with both urgency and resolve. A soft pop sounds, then silence, then a loud bang sharp, like someone slapping history's face. No one cries, no one screams. A few bow their heads. You can't see their faces clearly. Your eyes are fixed on your trembling hands, not from fear, but because you just heard the end of an era, condensed into a single shot. Afterward, a small group enters the room. They drag out Hitler's body, covered in a blanket, and Eva's, small as a fading shadow, to the bunker's rear courtyard, where a patch of unburned ground remains. They pour gasoline, a lot of it, then light it. The flames roar in the wind. No trumpets, no ceremony, no scripture, just the sizzle, the smell of burning flesh, and the acrid stench of rubber from melting leather shoes. You stand far back, not summoned, not forbidden, just standing, watching the fire and wondering, is it big enough to burn away everything he said, did, believed? You don't know, but you see clearly, Hitler is gone, not by a speech, not by a verdict, but by his own hand, and by the fire he once borrowed to burn the world. You return to your room, open your diary, and write, 3:29 p.m. The smell of smoke lingers on my collar, and history, perhaps, has finally gone silent. Eva Braun appears in the Führerbunker, not as a traditional wife, but as a quiet, fragile, and paradoxical figure in a world slowly disintegrating. Their wedding, if it can be called that, takes place in wordless stillness, without music or guests, only the heavy breathing of those awaiting the impending end. On a gloomy afternoon, under faint yellow light, Hitler wears a simple ceremonial uniform, high collar, hair disheveled as usual, standing beside Eva, in a plain white dress that still carries her characteristic elegance, her wavy hair and silent eyes full of unspoken emotion. No bells ring, no grandiose vows are spoken, Only a curt, cold declaration from an aging German soldier acting as officiant. You have sworn loyalty to each other before the witness of the party and the people. Eva gives a faint smile, no words escaping her lips. She knows this wedding isn't to celebrate happiness, but to acknowledge two people aware they're about to leave the world. You stand there, a witness to this event, hands trembling as you hold your notebook to record every detail, every word. Those moments are not joyful, but the silence of a fate long sealed.
After the wedding, a small gathering is set out, so simple it can hardly be called a feast.
A bottle of red wine, the bunker's last reserve, is opened. Hitler raises his glass, saying briefly, "To rebirth, to what remains." Eva raises hers, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment, holding a world of resignation and faint hope. You feel the heaviness in the air, not from the wine but from what's coming. This wedding isn't a beginning, but the final punctuation of a tragic story. Everyone is silent, no one speaks much, only the soft clink of glasses and sighs from souls awaiting death. You see the eyes of young soldiers, once bold on the battlefield, now mere shadows of themselves, hidden behind faded uniforms. The wedding unfolds in a tense, stifling atmosphere, where every word, every gesture is carefully measured to avoid touching unhealed wounds. You stand still, observing every small detail, the way Eva smooths her dress, the way Hitler slightly bows his head as if wrestling with his own thoughts, and the way everyone tries to stay calm amid history's storm. When the wedding ends, Eva retreats to her private room, saying nothing to you, only handing you a small white handkerchief, instructing you to keep it as proof of her existence in these final days. You take it, heart heavy. The Empire's bride had no flowers, no ring, no promises of a future, only the silence of an inevitable tragedy. And you know you too stand on the fragile line between life and death, witnessing the final chapter of a history written in blood and fire. You stand there, holding a small lighter, its flickering flame as fragile as your own survival. Amid history's rubble, the Führerbunker has grown so quiet, you can hear the heavy breaths of those around you, each carrying a piece of the final memory of a once glorious empire. The wedding has just ended. Eva Braun has retreated into the shadows of her room, and Hitler has become a dead myth. And now, you're given a task. No one wants to burn the Führer's body, along with that of his partner. The flame in your hand isn't just physical, it's the flame of an end, of judgment, of a history you know you'll never forget. You and a group of SS soldiers carry Hitler's body from the room, draped in an old dark blanket, handled hastily yet with solemn duty. Eva's body, small and still, is placed beside him, like a faint shadow, unable to shield anything. Outside, bombs still thunder like an apocalyptic symphony, the cold wind hitting your face, carrying the smell of smoke, scorched earth, and deep sorrow. As you lay the bodies on the ground, gasoline is poured, and the fire catches quickly, its flickering light reflecting on your face, a face that has never known free daylight, only the glow of flames and the darkness of fear. You see Hitler's hair catch fire first, the smell of burning hair mixing with flesh and gunpowder into an indescribable, acrid stench. You feel death's presence, not just in the flesh but in the air, as if history is shedding its weathered skin, revealing the raw, painful truth beneath. Dear Mother, the first line begins. So simple and direct, it pierces your heart instantly. I'm sorry I can't come home. I know you'll never get this letter, but if I don't write, I'm afraid I'll forget what you look like. You swallow hard, clutching the paper, eyes scanning on as if peering into the last shred of humanity left in this bunker. The writer doesn't sign their name, but from the blurred details between lines, I still keep the handkerchief you embroidered with the blue cat. Every time a bomb falls, I close my eyes and think of the sound of your knife chopping vegetables in the kitchen. You know it's from an ordinary person, not an officer, not a leader, probably an administrative clerk, maybe someone who sat near you in the typing room, maybe someone who smiled at you while lining up for afternoon porridge, maybe you if you had a different name, handwriting, or mother. The next paragraphs are messier, more emotional. Mother, everything here is crumbling. No one speaks anymore. They just nod. Even he, I can't say his name, only whispers to the walls now. No one knows what we're really doing. I'm afraid I'm recording the final lies of an era rotted to its core. I'm afraid I'll die under this ground, with no one to remember me. But what I fear most is if I survive, I won't know how to live with myself. You can't read on for a moment. Your eyes sting, not from tears. The bunker doesn't allow tears. Tears only slick the path to shame. You sit back against the wall, still holding the letter. The final line is a whisper in ink. If someone finds this letter, please tell my mother I think of her every day, and that I tried to live decently, as best I could. You fold the paper carefully, like cradling someone's soul in your hands. You don't know what to do. Burn it as an unnecessary document. Send it to an address that doesn't exist, or keep it as silent proof that someone in this bunker wasn't blind. In the end, you slip the letter into the cover of your diary, not to claim it, but to protect it. No one asks if you've gathered all the files. No one counts the papers you take to burn. Everyone's too busy surviving. At lunch that day, while Hitler lectures on will transcending space and time, you look at the wall behind him and wonder how many letters have been buried by history's screams. How many apologies went unheard. How many words to mothers never reached them. You sit there, typing as always, but in your left coat pocket, that thin paper feels warm, like a tiny beating heart, and you silently vow, if you survive, you'll take it out of here. Find someone who'll listen. Tell them that, amid gunfire and ash, there was once a child who wrote a letter to their mother that was never sent, but not meaningless, just undelivered. You hear the news like a dark joke told over a moldy lunch. Hitler has decided to kill himself. Not the decision of a man cornered, but a political proclamation, a historical ritual, a finale staged to the last detail. The news spreads unofficially, seeping like water from a broken pipe. Hitler will end it all tomorrow, and not just him. Eva Braun will go with him. You don't ask why. In this bunker, no one asks why anymore. Only when and where, and the answer is, at exactly 3 p.m., one at his private room, with a Walther PPK for him, and a cyanide capsule for her. You sit in the typing room, hands on the keyboard, but not typing. Your mind swirls with unwritten paragraphs, words you never dared think, now flood like a tide. This is the end. A man burning his own name will burn him like we burned every truth. A moment later, Goebbels enters, hands you a small stack of papers, the Führer's political testament. Inside are lines he's revised for days, handwritten, then given to you to type cleanly, perfectly, no spelling errors, no misplaced commas. Each word weighs like stone, like an indictment of the world he created. I choose death to avoid the disgrace of surrender, he wrote, my wife Eva Braun, and I depart this life together, in faith in Germany's rebirth. You pause at my wife, so they married, in the night, silently, no guests, no rings, just a registrar, a few drops of ink, and a vow to live until death. You type like a shadow, eyes fixed on the page, but your heart feels like it's walking through an unburied graveyard. Then you're given another task, prepare envelopes, 3 copies of the testament, seal them, number them, and hand them to Bormann, who will handle the aftermath. You don't know what aftermath means in a world about to explode, but you comply. Each time you fold a sheet, you think this is a copy of a myth's death, albeit a blood-soaked one. By afternoon, the bunker is eerily quiet. No hurried footsteps, no shouts, no reprimands, just stillness, as if everyone stopped breathing at once. Hitler doesn't appear at lunch, neither does Eva. A guard whispers, they're saying goodbye. You don't know to whom, the others, the walls, or themselves. At 2:50 p.m., you're called to the hallway leading to the Führer's room, not to meet him, just to stand there, holding a final telegram he wanted to send but didn't sign. You wait. 10 minutes later, the door closes forever. Those around you stand silent, watching the flames consume a man who once shook the world. The fire rises higher, smoke curling in waves, carrying stories, sins, and shattered dreams of an era. In that moment, you don't know whether to feel relief or haunted. Relief for the end, haunted by the start of a new cycle, of forgetting, of unanswered questions, of ghosts that can't be laid to rest. You think to yourself, can this fire erase everything, or will it leave only ashes and memories to haunt humanity forever? As the flames die down, leaving only glowing embers, you look around at tired, anguished faces, people who just witnessed the destruction of a dictator, but also the end of part of their own lives. You sigh, your hands still warm from the fire's heat, knowing you just held the spark that burned a chapter of history no one dares fully recount. You return to the room, where the fire is gone, but the flame in your heart still burns. You write in your diary, today, I didn't just burn bodies, I burned an era and I know what remains will be the ashes of memory. In the dark night, bombs still fall steadily, like the final beats of a dying heart. You know that even if history is burned away, the wounds will remain deep, persistent, and unhealable. And you, the one holding the lighter, will carry that flame, surviving amid the ashes, recording the story for future generations, so they know from the fire of the past, a future may rise or not. The Führerbunker suddenly becomes terrifyingly silent, devoid of hurried footsteps, frantic words, or the screams of a man who once ruled an empire. Those left in the bunker are now mere shadows, standing or sitting quietly, eyes cast down to the floor, or meeting each other with anxious gazes, but no one dares speak a word. Not because they've forgotten greetings, but because words have become superfluous, heavier than the final bullet that shook the city above. Everyone gathers in the main room, once the site of tense meetings, now just an empty space filled with the heavy breathing of souls counting down time. You stand on the sidelines, feeling the weight like an invisible wall between you and those around you. No one laughs, no one cries, no one speaks. The silence feels like an unspoken agreement about the fate awaiting all. The pale yellow light reflects off weary faces, deep crow's feet, and dark-circled eyes holding thousands of sleepless nights. You recall the early days when people still shouted, "Heil Hitler," and fueled fiery zeal, but now that zeal is extinguished, leaving only the ashes of belief. A few SS officers huddle in the room's corner, their eyes avoiding yours as much as they avoid the fading sunlight in Berlin's sky above. You see exhaustion in every gesture, every breath, every shrug, as if they've carried the world on frail shoulders. Even Blondie, Hitler's loyal dog, lies curled in a corner, eyes half closed, as if sensing something terrible approaching. No one can hold out long. An officer quietly steps forward, placing a hand on your shoulder, as if to pass on a final bit of strength, but his eyes brim with despair. You can't dispel. Time seems to stop. Everyone stands there, trapped between a lost past and an uncertain future. Faint whispers begin, not for comfort, but like silent prayers for forgiveness, for forgetting mistakes, for surviving this nightmare. You feel suffocated by the heavy air, an outsider yet the last keeper of a dead era's flame. Everyone knows what's coming: collapse, arrests, the end of the Third Reich, but no one dares say it. Words now are like bullets that could pierce the courage already drained dry. You look around, realizing that though no one speaks, their eyes tell a story greater than words, a story of failure, regret, and forgiveness that can't be voiced. You stand there, silently, noting every moment, every breath, every glance, knowing you're witnessing the final moments of an era where lies and pretense no longer have a place. Those left in the Führerbunker say nothing, but history will record their silence as a curse, a warning of what happens when power and madness merge. And you, the survivor, will live with the echo of that silence, carrying it as an inseparable part of memory, like a smoldering flame that never dies in your heart. The day you escaped the Führerbunker is unlike any before. You stood in the dim darkness of the bunker, smelling smoke, dust, and death seeping into every corner. But today, the sound outside isn't bombs. It's the relentless, cold march of Soviet troops. You stand frozen in a hallway corner, heart pounding like a war drum, eyes fixed on the heavy iron door, where the last soldiers are retreating or being captured. You know there's no time left for fear. A Soviet officer appears, tall, in a dark green uniform, eyes sharp as a blade. He looks at you, says nothing, then asks coldly, "Who are you?" You don't think, just answer, "I'm a secretary." The sentence trails off, and you see his eyes shift from suspicion to curiosity, then a faint smile, as if he, too, knows what it's like to be trapped in hell. You're led through hallways stained with dried blood, past rooms filled with bodies and torn documents. No one talks much, just the echo of footsteps and occasional distant gunfire. You know you're lucky to walk out, though still carrying the weight of the past months. The Soviets don't ask much about your past, don't closely check your records, just tell you to follow and stay silent. You don't know where you're going, only that outside is a world you've long forgotten. Stepping onto the ground for the first time in months, you feel the difference. Cool air, blinding light, distant birdsong, all like a dream that flickers and returns. A strange emptiness fills your heart, as if you've just walked out of a prison with no door. In the days after leaving the bunker, Soviet military police take you for interrogation. They ask about everything: Hitler, the war, intelligence, military plans. You answer truthfully, but cautiously, sharing only what you must. You know too much talk could brand you a collaborator, too little, a suspect. You choose silence mostly, using your eyes and patience as a shield. Eventually, you're released to a small refugee camp on Berlin's outskirts, where displaced residents try to piece together lives. You live in cramped rooms, filled with strangers, damp smells and sighs. Those around you are lost souls, carrying unspoken memories and pain. You try to blend in, though your heart remains heavy. The following days bring meetings with other survivors, people who know of you but never spoke directly. You find yourself listed as a collaborator, a label that terrifies and awakens you. You realize the past will never let you rest. You're no longer the anonymous secretary in the bunker. You're a survivor, a witness, someone who must carry the story of a brutal era. One day, sitting by a window overlooking the street, you try to hold on to a sliver of peace in your soul, knowing darkness will always lurk. You open your diary, flip through faded pages, trembling lines filled with longing, and whisper to yourself, "I survived." But survival isn't freedom, and you know the real journey is just beginning. The journey to live with indelible memories, to find yourself amid history's wreckage, and one day to tell this story, not with fear, but with truth. After leaving the Führerbunker, you thought you'd find freedom, a natural, genuine peace, after months in an underground hell. But the post-war world isn't liberation. It's a tattered dream. You can't escape. You survived, yes, but each passing day, you realize you're still trapped among the shards of the past, where memories won't let you sleep. You're taken to a refugee camp, where thousands like you, broken pieces of an era, coexist in cramped rooms, with the musty smell of old walls and the endless sighs of wounded souls. You try to adapt, but your eyes still blink rapidly at the sound of heavy footsteps on wooden floors, as if bracing for an invisible ghost. At night, you dream of the Führerbunker, not as a shelter, but as a doorless prison, where you're confined in the form of a small, frail secretary. Those tattered dreams won't let you forget the smell of burning tobacco, the rumble of bombs, or the angry shouts echoing in cold concrete rooms. You hear Hitler whispering in your mind, not with words, but with the chaotic emotions of a man who went too far in his grand dream. In the long days, you meet others who survived like you, some luckier, some who lost their families, some too haunted to speak. Each story they tell, each look they give, makes you see more clearly the devastation, not just of war, but of betrayal, loss of faith, and the deep loneliness in human hearts. You try to write in your diary again, but the trembling lines grow sparser, each word heavy with painful memories. Yet you write, to avoid being swept away by the tide of forgetting. You also start facing questions you once avoided. How do you live when there's no future? How do you forgive yourself for witnessing and recording history's most horrific mistakes? Some days, you feel swallowed by doubt and despair. You walk through ruined streets, seeing piles of rubble, blackened houses, and wonder, can anything be rebuilt from here? Or is it all just a tattered dream, a wound that never heals? In those moments, you seek out those close to you, new friends, old colleagues, and listen to their stories. Each one is a piece of a puzzle, helping you understand yourself, survival, and how people endure the worst circumstances. But no matter how hard you try, the emptiness creeps in. You feel trapped between past and present, between things you can't change and dreams you can't reach. And in the long nights, with only the wind through the window and your steady heartbeat, you think, the post-war isn't a new beginning. It's a tattered dream you can't escape, even awake, but you don't give up. You know you must live, must tell this story, not just for yourself, but for those who never knew the deep shadows you walked through. You write in your diary, "I survived, not to forget, but to remember, so no one has to go through this again." And you keep walking, in a new world full of shadows, with a fragile hope that one day, light will reach the deepest parts of your soul. You have no name in history books, no mention in newspapers or documentaries replayed on television. You're not a central figure in the era's portraits, not a hero or villain remembered in grand tales. You're on the sidelines, a silent recorder, a witness to a broken era without a word of glory, a faint footprint in history's dust. But history, though it tries to forget you, cannot erase your presence. Every line you wrote, every report you typed, every memory you kept shapes the broader picture of a world once drowned in darkness and madness. You're the humanity, the reality, that the most powerful tried to erase but couldn't. Because history isn't just battles or the decisions of leaders, it's also the stories of ordinary people, like you, those who survived, witnessed, and carried the pain, regret, and shattered hope. You recall your first days in the Führerbunker, filled with confusion, the roar of bombs, and despair's heavy cloak. You remember every glance, every gesture, every hurried breath of people on the edge of life and death. You remember serving tea, writing reports, hearing mad monologues, and watching an empire you thought would last forever crumble. Above all, you remember yourself, not a hero, not a villain, but a survivor amid fire and smoke. You understand your memories bridge past and present, untold stories and lessons future generations must heed. You know that without people like you, history would be cold numbers and caricatures, missing its human core, soaked in blood and tears. Now, having stepped out of the Führerbunker's darkness, standing in a new world full of promise and challenges, you realize life isn't just surviving, it's preserving, sharing, daring to face the worst to ensure it never repeats. You lived in hell, and now you carry the torch to illuminate the shadows the world doesn't want to see. You rewrite your story, not to justify, but to acknowledge, not to apologize, but to warn. You know that even if forgotten, even if never honored, the truth you tell will endure in small books, whispered tales, the hearts of those who listen. And that's enough to keep living. You have no name in history, but history, silently, surely has you. You're the voice of the buried, the light in the darkness, the survival of humanity in its bleakest moments. And as you close your final diary, you smile, not from joy, but from knowing you've fulfilled a vital mission, keeping darkness from fully eclipsing the light of truth. You step out of the room, out of the past, and move forward with the courage of a survivor, the heart of a witness, and the hope that your story will never be forgotten. The story of a personal secretary's life under Hitler, living in the Führerbunker amid an empire's collapse, offers profound and specific lessons applicable to modern life in the United States today. First, the detail of the secretary recording every mad word while staying silent, taking responsibility for errors not her own, highlights the pressure of a dictatorial work environment and the dire consequences of blind obedience. In American society, where free speech and personal responsibility are valued, this is a reminder that maintaining one's stance, responsibly challenging authority, and preserving professional ethics are crucial, no matter the circumstances. Second, the image of loneliness, fear, and pressure in the dark bunker, along with the crazed laugh when contemplating escape, but knowing it's impossible, symbolizes feeling trapped in difficult situations. This reminds us that in modern life, even when feeling stuck or suppressed, seeking help, staying resilient, and finding new paths are essential to overcoming challenges. Finally, the scene of the secretary holding the lighter to burn Hitler's body, both torching a painful past and opening a new chapter, is a reminder that each of us has the power to end negative aspects of life and start anew with hope, no matter how dark the circumstances. In the diverse, ever-changing United States, this lesson encourages individuals and communities to reflect on the past, learn from mistakes, and build a better future together. From these specific details, we draw a vital lesson. Don't let silence, blindness, or fear erode your integrity and courage. Stand up, challenge, and hold fast to faith in positive change. If you found today's story insightful about the historical shadows few dare mention, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch more surprising and profound episodes. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the hidden corners of life and history.